get my 6. What's up, everybody? Giving you a beautiful partial view of my fruit orchard here. I was out here doing some work today. It's that time of year. Fall is like less than a week away, so that means it's not so blazing hot here in Virginia that you can't get out and do some yard work in the middle of the day, which I did. About halfway through with the orchard, got almost 60 trees in here. I'm going around taking off the deer guards, cutting the weeds down. I know it's not necessary as the lazy people would say, but for those of us who enjoy the aesthetic views of a beautiful property that you work hard to landscape and then upkeep, I frankly do think it is necessary. So I was doing that today. Just want to show you a view of that. I'll finish the rest tomorrow. I'm going to walk around here as we make our way up to the campground so you can see the beautiful splendor of the homestead here as we ease into fall. I want to show you something that I'm very happy about, that I know a lot of you who have been hoping for more higher quality, clearer views of the video. Isn't this feel beautiful? This is where my son and I and Dearly sometimes will join us out here and play football like every day. It's beautiful. The quality of the videos, I know I do a lot of uploads in lower quality, and that's simply because I live in the middle of nowhere and we have like virtually almost dial-up internet. But high speed is coming. I hope it comes by October, so that when I come out here and tell every single story of October Nights Part 2, 31 more tales for the Halloween season, there you can see where we play basketball, I can give you some of the, pinched myself with my tripod. I got some stories for you, so hang in there. I'm going to kind of paraphrase a lengthy one on the way up to the campground today, but I printed off a few that people have sent in on the email to the email address. Had them all organized, so I just dropped one. So if you have a story you want me to share with everybody that's related to the paranormal, supernatural, cryptozoology, anything like that, you can send it in to crazylake@mail.com. But here's what I wanted to show you. Look at that. They came up and actually hooked up the high-speed box today. They've done most of the infrastructure out here where we live. And now they said the next step is basically somebody's going to come run that line to the house or something. Some neighbors have told us that they've heard by the end of this month. The guy that came today said perhaps not for another 2 months, but I know that they're very conservative with their estimates when they give them to you so that they don't get your hopes up. Because if they're not, they get a lot of people will call and complain because it's not going quick enough. And I understand that. So anyway, wonderful stories to tell you today. One from our friend Charlie in England about a topic we've been discussing at length here lately, and a couple of different got a dog man story, a hellhound story, and the first one, as I make my way up to the campground, made it up to the apple orchard now in the backyard. Started out at one fruit orchard, about 60 fruit trees down there. Got 8 apple trees up here we planted, and they produced apples this year. More than they ever have. Just, it's so wonderful watching this place grow up as we have, and knowing that we planted literally more than 2,000 trees here. Started out with seedlings, saplings that we moved from the tree line with the forest to different places all over the place, and now many of them are 20 feet high. It's so exciting to come out here because it looks different every day. I tell you, it looks different every day. So I'm going to give you guys a walk around as I make my way up here, because a lot of you have been here on this channel since we started this stuff. So I'll give you a view as well. But I received a story from Becky in Albemarle, North Carolina. A lot of uniqueness there, or not uniqueness, but what is that? Irony. Here's the irony. That's the name of the county I live in. Here in Virginia, number one. And number two, I've been to Albemarle, North Carolina, a couple years ago when we went down to the Outer Banks. It was just before COVID hit. We wanted to kind of go around the sound, the Albemarle Sound, just to take in the view, and left a little late that day, and it got dark on us, and I was tired of driving, so we actually stopped in Albemarle and spent the night in a hotel just right there off of the highway, and then went on into the Outer Banks. Can't remember which place we stayed at that time the next day. And yes, definitely get my 6, because we have now entered his, her, it, or their territory. We're in the trails now. By the way, for those of you who've been following this channel since it started, do you remember when this was a hay field? This was just a hay field, and then it was a meadow, and the meadow is now, as you can see, is quickly becoming a forest. These are great birch trees that are over 20 feet tall. A couple poplars in there over 20 feet tall. So about half the meadow is still meadow, and the other half is forest. So Becky sent in a story that, and she mentioned in the beginning of the story something that I've often wondered about too. It's like, why aren't we hearing more of this? We often hear about haunted lands. People will experience supernatural events or paranormal events where houses were built on what used to be maybe land inhabited by Native American Indians. Maybe there are subdivisions built on Native American burial plots, kind of like the movie Poltergeist. Getting up here close to the campground. Yeah, there's a campground over there. You see the wood splitter under the tarp, the fire pit. Way down there somewhere is the house. You can barely see the house now. We had a campfire up here the other night at the campground. Me and my wife and our son. We hung out for a few hours. And we were talking about how you can't even see our house anymore from if you're sitting around the fire pit, because the trees have gotten so tall, and it really feels like we're out in the forest, you know, in our backyard. It's a big backyard, but it's really neat because that's what we were going for. But Becky, there in Albemarle, North Carolina, shared that her and her family live in a house in a subdivision. She describes it as like starter homes. She mentioned that her and her husband are still in their 30s, early 30s. They've got a couple of boys. I think she said her sons were 6 and 8. They're living life as they can and as they go. They're not biting off more than they can chew. They've got a small, simple house, but it's enough room for them, and they live within their means as opposed to above them. And so they really believe that by the time they're in their 40s, you know, my age, they're going to have a bigger house, bigger land. And Becky, kudos to you, because you know what? I did the same thing. When I was 30-ish, you know, my first house I bought, I was 26, and I bought it a little bit earlier than I felt comfortable buying it with. I was married to my first wife, and she wanted to be, you know, wanted it all now, you know, and this is not an insult to her. You know, I hope that those of you who watch this channel have been going over and watching Jim Stump's channel. It's called Counselor's Couch 101. He changed the name of his channel recently. Down there's a house way down there. A lot of times people have problems with relationships, and the relationships just don't work. It's not because she's bad, she's terrible, or he's bad and he's terrible. It's a lot of times because people just end up getting together with people that just aren't for them. And a lot of times it takes maturity, age, and time to realize this. My ex-wife is not a bad person, not at all. She was a wonderful person. She was just not the right person for me. Turns out she was a wonderful mother. She stepped up and was the parent I couldn't be for a number of years, and did an excellent job raising our 3 children by herself without my help for a long time. Very happy to be providing, well, whatever. It is what it is, post-help. Not that it's worth much, but hey, everything counts, I guess. Everything helps. But she was just the wrong person. She was not a bad person. It's taken a lot of time, a lot of years and a lot of maturity to understand that. And then it also took getting together with the right person dearly to understand the differences between a match and a mismatch. But she was she was not alone in this, that she wanted it all now. She wanted it all now. She fit into like a demographic I would refer to as yuppies. You know, people who are willing to bite off more than they can chew. They don't mind the debt, you know, as long as they have the house that's maybe a little bit bigger than they need, or the car that's a lot nicer than maybe, you know, anything required to get you from point A to point B. Yuppie. I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about. Doesn't make her a bad person, and yuppies aren't bad people. They're just not always that smart with their finances. So anyway, Becky's not a yuppie, is the point I'm getting at. This video is going to go on for an hour if I don't just get to the story. So Becky and her family, the house they live in, their starter home subdivision, was once a farm. And it's common, like listen, Where I live, out here in my part of the county, people put their land in conservation easements. And I like that because that means you can't do commercial development. You know, when the old farmer over there dies, his greedy grubbing offspring can't get the land and sell it to a land developer. And then you see, 6 dozen houses pop up. They all look the same. These McMansions on these little 1/4-acre lots where everybody gets their 5 feet wide strip of lawn that they get to mow with their plug-in electric lawnmowers. Ain't happening out here. Can't do it. So the land will remain land. It's a beautiful thing. But she lives in a subdivision that was not in conservation easement, and the baby boomer offspring sold it as quickly as they could as soon as they inherited it, and it's now a subdivision. She lives in it. And I just inhaled an ant up the nose. It's like Ozzy snorting ants. Hey, our well wishes go out with Ozzy Osbourne. He's suffering a lot of health problems, but he's still trying to get out there and tour. Ozzy, just please don't piss on the Alamo anymore. I don't know if he's allowed back in the state of Texas or not, but remember, he was banned from Texas for a while for pissing on the Alamo. So anyway, Becky said that shortly after they moved into their house, here we are, we've made it to the campground, doing our walkabout. She started hearing early in the mornings what sounded like somebody on a tractor. And it sounded like the tractor would be coming right towards the part of the house where her bedroom was. And then it would stop, but then just a few seconds later, she'd hear it on the other side of the house going the other way. And she mentioned in her email that her house, her subdivision, is about 10 miles away from an airport, but they are on a direct flight path with the runway. And so she thought maybe it was airplanes taking off or coming in for landings. But after about the 4th or 5th time, we better pay attention to this. What's this say? Warning, Bigfoot area, potentially. Stay on marked trails. We got our security cams up. We catch some weird stuff on these security cameras. Very weird stuff. And we put it on, put them on YouTube here, and people got to add their 2 cents. Some guy today, Erie has been having fun with some of these vertically challenged individuals that live under bridges. She's been off the last couple of days, so I've been having fun with them. Some guy wrote today, what'd he write? On that video, that old man we caught up here looked like maybe it was Brandon in a Snuggie falling down a hill or something there a year and a half ago. He's like, what did he write? He said, what a boring video. Can't believe somebody would upload a stupid, lazy video for a few bucks on YouTube. And I can't believe how stupid all the people in the comment section are. You people are idiots saying this and that, thinking it's this. He couldn't believe he lost a few IQ points. Well, I followed Erie's lead, and I kind of commented on that one. I was like, a few bucks? Dude, this single video alone has been paying our mortgage for us for more than a year, and that's true. And then I just told him, look, everybody's just not as smart as you. I mean, no, wait, that was a different guy, another smartest guy in the room, going on and on about how stupid the people who watch my videos are. A lot of these guys, man, they want to just tell everybody how smart they are. By the way, there's the listening device for the what did I call that thing I built up here a few years ago to communicate with him, her, it, or they? I can't remember. Whatever. I need to go back and watch that old video. But anyway, I told the guy, I don't know, been paying the mortgage with that video alone for more than a year. Oh, and then I said, tell us more about how smart you are. Whatever. I'm so stupid. Hey, there's reasons to put security cameras in odd places on your property when you live in the country. You just get random stuff that's weird. And a lot of times it generates millions of views and it pays your mortgage for you. I mean, hey, don't hate the player, hate the game, brah. All right, getting to the woods. I'm going to have to set this up and read our stories. So let me finish up with Becky's. So anyway, after the 4th or 5th time she heard this thing, this tractor, which she referred to as a ghost tractor, she mentioned it to her husband, and he was like, oh my God, I've been hearing it too. And he told her that one morning he actually was awake because he had to go potty. And he went outside and he looked up into the sky, and there was no plane. He said it was right at daybreak. So, he clearly would have been able to see the blinking lights on a plane, the flashing lights on a plane, but there were none. So once they lived there for a while, because I think she said that they lived there 6 or 8 years now, and they befriended some of their neighbors, and they started talking to people about it. people said, yeah, we've been hearing it too. And she said that one woman, I think their kids go to school together. I just read this email today, so told her, said, wait until you hear it backfire. And it was less than a week later, she heard what sounded like this tractor backfiring while it was, coming up. I heard a tree tap. There's another one. They're like, come on, get on with the stories. So she said it only happens in summer and fall, never happens in winter or early spring, which ironically, people don't cut hay those times of year. So she believes that the subdivision is haunted by like the ghost of the farmer, at least the last farmer to have it before his baby boomer children sold it off, cashed in to get the money. She said he was in World War II, and he died in the 90s. And she says she can't believe that there aren't more stories like this going around. Listen, Becky, I have heard stories like this, and I think as time goes by, we're going to be hearing more and more of them. Because you look at a lot of these subdivisions in the mid-Atlantic in the South, from Virginia down, used to be huge farms. I mean, if Indian territories and Indian burial grounds are haunted, why not old farmland, where people had farmed for centuries, and now all of a sudden there's all these yuppies living there mowing their little 5 feet wide strips with their electric plug-in mowers, you know what I mean? So anyway, I'm where I need to be to read you the rest of the stories. I hope you like that one. Becky said I could use her name, just not her last name, because she knows how judgmental people are. Trust me, I know. I mean, like the dude who said my stupid video we put on for whatever, a few bucks, judging me, not knowing that stupid lazy video's been paying my mortgage for last year. I mean, again, don't hate the player, hate the game. Let me set this thing up on a tripod. I'm gonna read you a few other stories. And we're back. Got use of both hands. Oh, I hope I didn't mess these up. I dropped them all the way up here. So, I'm gonna read this one first because it comes from a longtime viewer. Brittany Loves the Outdoors. That's the name she uses on here. And she's in Virginia as well, or at least the story takes place in Virginia. I actually Googled this place, Brittany, and looked it up. It's down in southwest Virginia, just south of Wytheville, down close to the Tennessee border. We'll get to the name of the location. It looked like an interesting place. Dearly and I fantasize about cashing out ourselves up here in overpriced Albemarle County, Virginia. I mean, it's whatever. Fortunately, we catch weird shit on videos in these fields, and so we can handle the mortgage and whatnot quite easily. But man, listen, down there where this story takes place, land sells for 10 cents on the dollar to what it sells for around here. We could cash out and go down there and get a couple 100 acres and build our dream house and still just be sitting on sacks of cash and just fish in the James River all day. And we've been talking about doing that when our kid gets out of school up here. You get what you pay for. The quality of life up here is really nice. I mean, whatever. Let me get to the story, okay? But this is an interesting area. We've traveled through this area a couple places. All right, so Brittany writes, and yes, get my 6. See, no, where's the guy today? He's not here today. Last time he was standing right there, and he moved over to, was that him? Get my 6. Hello, Kevin. My name is Brittany. You probably know me by Brittany Loves the Outdoors. I've been watching your channel ever since you have been on YouTube. So, Brittany, I hope you enjoyed the tour of the what used to be hayfields today, which is now meadows and forests and fruit orchards. I had something happen to me when I was younger that I cannot explain. I was around 15 or 16 at the time and at my granny's house. I always stayed there. She was more of a mother to me than my own. She lived deep in the, didn't lick my finger enough. She lived deep in the woods in Saltville, Virginia. There we go. They're listening. It was a small town where everyone knew each other. Well, she lived right beside a creek. I loved playing in it so much that I would walk in it and in some parts swim up and down in it. My granny had to come find me a few times. She always said there's something out here and you need to stay close to the house. I didn't think anything of it like most teens wouldn't have, and well, I was mistaken. One afternoon, I went out playing in the creek behind her house. Something was different. I couldn't tell what it was at first because the noise from the creek was so loud. I couldn't hear anything, but I smelled a horrible smell. It smelled like dead animal and urine mixed together. I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching me. I went to my big favorite rock and didn't think anything else about it. I could go and sit and think and just get away. I loved my special spot, but that feeling kept getting stronger. Well, I looked around towards the barn and I saw something big and hairy dart behind it. This was across from where I was sitting at the big rock. I freaked out and ran across the creek. In the process of running, my foot slipped off of a rock and it rolled my ankle. I fell down and was sitting on the side of the bank. All I cared about was getting out of there. I was sitting there trying to gather myself when all of a sudden I heard footsteps behind me. My eyes were tearing up at this point. I knew this thing was going to eat me. Well, it was my granny behind me. She heard me scream when I fell. She helped me into the house and put ice on my ankle. I couldn't get what I saw out of my mind. My granny didn't have dogs that lived near her, and in the back of my mind, I was thinking it was a bear, but I knew it wasn't. It was on 2 legs walking like a human. Later that night, I laid down upstairs. I still had that feeling that something was watching me, but there wasn't anyone around. My granny was asleep. We were the only people there. Why was I feeling like something was watching me? Then I thought back from earlier when I felt that feeling at the creek. I got up and went downstairs and opened the side door that went out onto her deck that wrapped around her house. I walked around it, trying to calm myself once again, and then I saw it. It was standing right behind her well house. It was a wolf-looking like creature. It had a face like a canine, and when it realized I saw it, it perked its ears up and let out this piercing scream. I swear that thing stood at least 7 feet tall. Its head was over the top of the well house. I watched, frozen in fear. It was sniffing the air like it knew I was there. I quietly made it back inside, and then I heard it scream again. I ran to my granny's room, telling her I knew what was outside, and I was never going back to my special spot again. She moved a few months after that. That was my first and only encounter I've ever had. I don't think it was paranormal. It looked pretty real to me. Thank you, Kevin. If you share this story, I give you permission to mention my name. As we did at the beginning, Brittany loves the outdoors. Yeah, that doesn't sound paranormal in nature. It sounds cryptozoological. Remember, folks, paranormal is from the other side of the veil. Not that the things that fall along the lines of cryptids aren't either. They may come in and out of portals. A lot of folks believe that. It's one of the ways in which they are able to hide or just vanish and disappear, which is the case for perhaps another cryptid, or what could be something more along the lines of the supernatural in our next story. It's about a hellhound. And we have a returning submitter here, Romy Blair, who says I can use her name because she doesn't give a rat's ass what anyone thinks. That's such a liberating feeling when you get to the point to where you don't give a shit about what people think of you in life. You know, there's a saying, and it's common, you've probably heard it, what other people think of me is none of my business. That's easily said, but it's harder to do. I think a lot of it comes with age, and a lot of it comes with when you finally get to the point in life where you accept the fact, or where you at least realize no matter what you do, people are going to talk shit about you anyway. No matter how good you do something or how well you do something, they're going to pick apart the ways you could have done it better or focus on what you did incorrectly. And you just get to the point to where you say F it and you just don't care anymore. Romy's there, I'm there, most of you are there. That's why you're here. On with the story. Greetings, Mr. Lake. Well, I will get to the point, for I do tend to ramble and go off point. That's why you're here. So I'll do my best with this short story, I hope. This happened while sitting at my computer in my home office near Albuquerque around 5 or 6 years ago. Me and my family drove right through Albuquerque this summer on a trip out to the Grand Canyon. Beautiful city. I happened to glance out the window that was just a foot or so away from me. The window provided a great view of the desert. The mesa was beautiful. I saw an unusually huge black shaggy dog. I really didn't give it much thought, so I looked back at the monitor before me and continued my typing. But I found myself doing a double take, for I had come to the realization that this was not an ordinary dog. He was walking on the sidewalk in front of in front of the house at the opposite corner behind my home on the next street. Some people would call it kitty corner or catty corner, depending on what part of the country one is from. At any rate, I tried my best to determine his size just by visual glances. I compared the windows of the house with his body. He was very close to halfway up the height of them. He turned his head my way, and I was able to tell that his ears were pointed, his teeth were like those of a huge bear, and his eyes were like red rubies on fire. They looked as though they were ablaze. If he were to stand on his hind legs, he would be at least 8 feet tall, if not more. I felt my heart in my throat. My blood was throbbing through my veins in sheer terror. As he continued his walk, he stepped down off the curb and walked to the other sidewalk, veered off onto the sand, began walking into the mesa, and vanished into thin air. Like I was just talking about with the portals, how some of these cryptids seem to maybe be able to go in and out of the portals. I jumped to my feet and ran from room to room, window to window, for a better view, but to no avail. He was gone. All that was in the sand was a few tumbleweeds and no other vegetation whatsoever. There was no place to hide. I regained my composure, ran to the computer once again, and desperately tried to look up someone who knew something about hellhounds, black dogs, Baskerville hounds, shucks. Perhaps an author on this subject. I located a Dr. Simon Sherwood from the University of Derby in England. I emailed him explaining my experience, and he immediately responded. I sent him pictures, maps, any calculations I possibly could, for this correspondence took a very long time. After careful consideration and analyzing, he confirmed it was indeed a hellhound. Here it comes, get this. The following morning, which happened to be a Good Friday, I got word that my stepson was in a horrific car accident. He was going the wrong way and caused a head-on collision. The men in the back seat of the car were ejected out of the windshield. He had been drunk driving. He always was a troubled one, even as a kid. The scene was so horrible that it made CNN news. That's terrible. Don't know if this was an omen, for I never asked Dr. Sherwood if the two subjects had any correlation, so I guess I'll never know. Thank you for your time. Take care. Romy Blair, a.k.a. Rudy BB, on the comments of your YouTube. And again, she gives me permission to use her name. Or his name, Romy. I don't know. This could be either. Yeah, creepy story. It's almost like it was a premonition. You know, Romy did not mention in the story whether there were any fatalities in that accident. I'm kind of assuming there was. I hope not. But, you know, that's what the hellhounds come for, to take you. Just this spring I read The Hound of the Baskervilles by What's-His-Face, read all the Sherlock Holmes stories. That was one of the 4 novels. There's 4 Sherlock Holmes novels and like 58 short stories. My memory is terrible. Like, Arthur Conan Doyle. Duh, there we go. And I'm reading Jane Eyre right now by Bronte. Was it Charlotte Bronte? Yeah, Emily Bronte wrote Wuthering Heights. I read that years ago. That is very hard to understand. Okay, anyway, enough about, that's all I do, read and write. That's how people are always like, hey, can I have some tips as a writer? Yeah, hey, and it's not coming from me, it's coming from His Majesty, Stephen King. They say if you want to be a good writer, you only got to do 2 things, read a lot and write a lot. It's basically what I do if I'm awake, that and spend time with my family. And when I'm not with them, I'm reading and writing, well, and working out, exercising, and planting trees. Thousands of them. All right. On to a story from our viewer named Charlie in England. We've talked several times. I think maybe the last video I made, there wasn't a video that we picked up in one of these security cameras of one of these weirdos around here up to no good, falling down hills, peeping in bathroom windows. Man, I told some guy, I used to think people in the city were crazy and the people in the country were not. I'm convinced people in the country are crazier than people in the city. Because people in the city, they got like jobs and careers and coffee shops. Man, a lot of these folks in the country, they're just bored. So they do weird stuff on their neighbors' properties and make their way to YouTube and pay their mortgages for them, etc., etc. All right. Yeah, the neighbor with the crayon, that dude paid our mortgage for 2 years, and that video is still paying our utilities. But I'm a stupid moron. I know. I need a real job. I know. Gosh, whatever. Man, you know what? I used to wish I was as smart as some of these smartest guys in a room type who go on and on about how smart they are. I'm glad I'm just a dumb hillbilly from West Virginia who had to figure out a way to make it my own, on my own through alternative means like social media and poorly written self-published books and stuff. Because, man, I watch these guys coming and going to work back and forth early in the morning, late in the evening. I'm like, I don't want no part of that, brah. But again, don't hate the player, hate the game. Hello, Kevin. I love your channel and content. You asked for views on being cracked and therefore aware of the paranormal. Here's my experience. Charlie, 63 in England. You can use my first name. What he's talking about here is we've talked about, maybe when you've experienced trauma or you endured abuse in your upbringing or at some point in your life that you get kind of cracked in such a way that things are allowed in. Charlie's got his own story. Charlie continues, my family abused me, and my peers and school teachers continued this. My late father's religious dogma was anti-spiritual/paranormal. On the other hand, it was just as well. My late maternal grandmother was a medium and a psychic. Further peer torture in my teens cracked the cap off the bottle. I crossed a threshold. Now a medium, himself, Charlie's now a medium, in a house built in 1896, I was aware of the tantrums of the earthbound spirit of a stillborn baby on the 3rd floor. I wouldn't go up there, not even in daylight. Rural 1960s and 1970s Hampshire was a hotbed of folklore. And chilling as it was, I loved it. I bet. I'd love it. There was one urban myth which stated that if you walked around a grave in Elling churchyard, a hand was supposed to emerge from a fissured tombstone. I tried it and saw nothing. Another said that if you walked along Neller's Lane, a woman in black would stroll out of the hedge along the street beside you, then back into the blackthorn at the other end. A friend's uncle experienced this and had a heart attack. I tried it and I saw no woman. I went to all the right places at the right times to see fairies and saw only moths. Until, when pottering on the back garden path at night, I saw two. So he saw two fairies. It was when I was not trying that I was aware of entities. We've talked about that here too. Day to day I saw orbs and sighted and heard spooks. As I lay in bed at 1 a.m. one night, awake, a translucent green Marilyn Monroe-like entity loomed over me and attempted to seduce me. When she touched my arm, my flesh crawled. Desperate, I recited the Lord's Prayer. She vanished. I don't know if I'd have gotten rid of that one. Not for a while. My head out of the gutter. I never resorted to that prayer again. My grandma just said to tell him to F off. So I did, and it worked every time. Once, I again walked along Neller's Lane. A male figure wearing a flat cap and carrying a lit hurricane lamp ambled toward me. He turned to his right, stepped into the blackthorn hedge, and disappeared. I investigated. There was no gap in the hedge, gate, or stile, just dense blackthorn. Charlie, thank you so much for your submission. So that does it for today, folks. We've gone well over half an hour because I have ADD and I get sidetracked by trees I've planted and trees that have just grown up on their own. And what a beautiful sunset back here in the forest behind us. If you have a story that you want shared on the channel, go ahead and send it in. The email address is crazylake@mail.com. And just so you'll know, there are many stories that have been submitted that I have not been able to get to. And I have decided I'm going to put them all together as they come in, and every 40 to 50,000 words or so, release them as collections, volumed up collections, because listen, 40,000 words or more is actually the length of a novel. This is how many stories you folks have been sending in. We're close to 40,000 words already just in the last month we've been doing this. So somebody complained here recently when I talked about how I'm not going to go back and talk about a lot of the tragic crap from my past. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not revisiting that stuff. I'm sending you to Jim Stump over at Counselor's Couch 101 for that. He's qualified to deal with it. And I'm tired of going back. I know it would help folks who were in similar situations. It would help them feel better. But listen, you got to take action. Like Jim says in his videos, depression, all these things, it's not a spectator sport. You got to take action. Listen, it's okay to listen to a guy like me that you can relate to talk about things you've been through yourself that make you feel bad and feel better while you're watching the video. But you got to get up, go out and do something. You got to exercise. You got to take care of your body. You got to eat healthy. You got to get fit. And you got to say the past is the past. I'm not going to, I'll never forget it, but I'm not going to dwell on it anymore. I'm going to focus more on the good things in my life so that my future will be brighter than those dark days behind me. And I'm just not going back and dredging mine up anymore. I'm sending you to Jim Stump. Somebody didn't like that, and they left a comment about that. And they were like, why are you getting people to send you these stories? I think she even said these stories people are sending in, they're making them up just so you'll make videos. Whatever. She said, what are you going to do? Use them for literary fodder? And I thought, that's an idea. Why not just put them all together as a collection and release them as collections? Because here's the deal. This is helping people too. What if Becky's story, living in a subdivision that's potentially haunted by a ghost tractor or a ghost farmer? What if you're an educated professional who does not believe these things exist or that these things are real, that these things happen, but you're experiencing them? Like Charles in England. Wouldn't you like to have a place to be able to go to and say, hey, you're not alone, and it's nice to know I'm not alone because here's what happened to me. And then I come out here and I tell you these stories. Yeah, you know what? That's helping people. Maybe not in the way a lot of folks want help, but there's Jim Stump for that. And there's other channels for that. There's all kinds of other outlets for that in other places. So I thought, you know what? Just like, whatever. Some of the best ideas I've gotten on this channel have come from people kind of like criticizing me for either the way I do things or the way I don't. I've turned these lemons they've thrown at me into pitchers of lemonade, and it's really worked. I never even mentioned my books for the first 2 years I had this channel, but then people started, putting it together. I think this was toxic blood relatives from my past in the comments section saying he's just making these stupid videos to try to sell his books on Amazon. So I came out here tongue-in-cheek and mentioned that I had books on Amazon. You guys and girls that watch these videos basically gave me a writing career I always fantasized about and never had. Last year, my novel, The Lunatic, was the best-selling novel on Etsy. And October Nights Part 1 continues to be like in the top 10 best-selling Halloween story collections on all of Amazon every October. Parts 1 and 2 are available with an autograph in our Etsy store. The link's in the description box below. So when people throw lemons at you, when they're throwing rotten tomatoes, man, I had pasta today. The sauce was awesome, and my wife just used like a little bit past due tomatoes and garlic and some other things. It's delicious. So that's what I've done. The woman wasn't happy that I'm doing this now instead of talking about, these bad things happen to me, blah, blah, blah. Because so many good things happen to me now, and life is so good, that's where my focus is going to be. So we're probably half a dozen stories away from the first volume being submitted for publication. If you've got a story and you want it in that first volume, send it to us quicker than slower. Sooner than later. crazylake@mail.com. See you for more next time.